Hey folks, Dale Gilbert. Going to talk about getting ready to do a little bit of jigging for walleye today. And first thing I do is I've got this knuckleball jig, and one of the things that I'm real particular about is how I tie almost all my lures to my rigs, and I use what they call a Palmer knot. So you kind of put this through the eye one way, put it back through again the other way, so you kind of create this little bit of a loop, and then do an overhand knot, kind of like you're going to tie your shoe. So I've got this overhand knot, and I tie it, I pull her up, moist a little bit, take the loop and put the bait, whatever it is, whether it's a jig, whether it's a swivel, whether it's a snap swivel, whatever I do, I put it on, I put that loop, put the bait through that loop, and then snug the whole thing up like this. And it's actually one of the best knots you can tie, because even with fire line, it doesn't slip. One of the things that I do with all of my rigs pretty much is to do the Palmer knot like this. But then you'll notice here what I've got, and this is a 15-pound fluorocarbon leader that I've got tied onto this, about maybe a 2.5 foot fluorocarbon leader. And I do that because the fluorocarbon is supposedly like invisible in the water to the fish, whatever, but it also creates a little bit of a cushion for me, as far as, because there's a little bit of stretch, a little bit of give to that, not much, but it also helps with abrasion resistance and like being bit off from pike, that I don't get bit off anywhere near as much as I would have without the leader. And then if you go up the rig here a little bit, you'll see I got a barrel swivel tied on. Again, that was tied on with the Palmer knots. And then I've got, in this case here, 6-pound test Berkeley fire line. But you'll notice I put a little bead in front of that. So I've got the bead, the swivel, about a 2.5 foot, 3 foot leader, and the setup, and that's how pretty much every one of my rigs are set up. And there's a number of reasons I do this. Like I said, I've mentioned the leader helps the getting bit off and the abrasion, whatever, but the little bead on top up here acts as an indicator. So when I have people fishing with me, I used to do a lot of guiding, and it used to be really frustrating because people get really excited when they get a big fish on them. It's like they just got to reel right down to the water, the rod tip right to the water, right to the fish, and about this much. So this, I tell them, you see the bead, you stop reeling, because then I get a little bit of a cushion here, because then basically what I don't want is to have any more than like basically a rod length of line like this out when they're still working with that fish, and let the rod manage and do things. When you get that big fish up there close to the boat, he's going to take a run, and you don't like that boat, and it gives you a little bit better chance of getting that fish in the boat. So every one of my rigs are set up pretty much this way, and maybe this one might be a little bit long, but then I can bust off or retie a couple times here without having to redo the whole thing. But I really like that fluorocarbon leader. And then again, for jigging for walleyes, what I'm using here is actually my favorite rod and reel combination. And this is a Swait rod. It's a 6.3 medium power, extra fast action tip, with a carbon tube length that is just super sensitive. That's the 6.3 longer rods, to me, you start losing sensitivity. I like this because I can still do a really good job, and I absolutely love the G-clutch handle system, because you'll notice where the reel seat is onto the rod like here. When I hang on to this rod and a reel set up like this and I'm jigging, you'll see my fingers sitting and my thumb is sitting right on that rod blank. So again, I've got a better feel than you would with a lot of other setups. And I can tell you with jigging, that's a big deal, because knowing when you get a bite and when something picks it up, and being able to know what you're feeling even when the jigs bounce on the bottom and what it feels like, is huge. Absolutely my favorite setup. I've got a Brigade X, which is a high-end, the very high quality spinning reel. This is a 2000 series, 1000 series I should say. So it's a little smaller than some of them, but it's a really nice reel with a kind of nice handle that's a little extra lighter. Got a super smooth drag. You can see on this how smooth that drag is and how that pulls. And it's also something that's really critical, especially when you're using the fire line, because with the fire line, it's a rated line, and there's absolutely no forgiveness, no stretch to it. So it causes an issue if you don't have something set up and the drag set pretty light. When the fish wants to take off, something's got to give, and that drag's got to do it. So makes for a super setup. And then this particular rod, different than about most any other jigging rod you're going to find, is got what's called Keegan guides. These little Keegan guides, I can tell you, looking at that, to me initially I would kind of wonder if that would even work for a spinner rod. but they are phenomenal. I can cast farther with this setup than any rod I own. I'm just something about the design with these little bitty eyes and how that straightens that line when it comes through and doesn't have the friction, that it makes you cast significantly farther than I can with any other rod I have, which also is a real plus. So makes for a great setup. Got a nice hook keeper back here on the handle, and just absolutely my number one favorite rod for jigging. It's a Dale Gilbert Signature Series, available through North 40 Outfitters. It's Sway rods.